Hello and welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. Today we are going to get right into a project that I had mentioned last week on my last video. It does involve a jelly roll, but I'm actually going to be using some little 11-inch squares from this bundle that I have here. And there is a jelly roll pattern. It's a free pattern that you can find out on my website under my resource tab, and you'll find the Fat Quarter Shop link there, and go under that and I'll show you exactly where this pattern is. In fact, I'll link it in the description box so that you can easily get to that. Here is a close-up of the photo of this jelly roll quilt. It's called Railway Quilt, and it's a very simple one where I'm going to be sewing 4 strips together. And I'm not going to make the actual quilt. I'm going to make just the center, just one of these squares I'm going to make for the center of my table in my breakfast area upstairs. So it's going to be a fast, quick little quilt that I'm going to be doing. But you might enjoy using this pattern in a jelly roll that you have, or you could curate a jelly roll from your scrap stash and create the same pattern. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be using these 11-inch squares. They came from this bundle. And the first thing I'm going to do, obviously, is press everything because we have some wrinkles here. So I'm going to get everything pressed. And then I'm going to cut them into 2.5-inch strips from these 4 colors. And I will then be sewing them together in strips, 4 strips, to create, to begin the process of making this fun little block. All right, I'm using my Stripology ruler here. And I'm going to straighten up the edge of these. I've placed them, I've stacked the 11-inch squares underneath, and now I'm going to straighten up this outer edge here. So as we can see here, now that has been straightened. Now I'm going to be cutting 2.5-inch strips from this set of squares. All right, so I have my squares cut, or my strips cut, excuse me, and we are ready to get to work sewing them together. This I'm going to throw in my crumbs. It's not quite 1 inch wide, and this is even skinnier, so that is going to go in my crumb basket. And we're going to go ahead and sew these together. I'm going to determine the order in which I want to sew the strips together, and then I'll get them sewn. So I think I've decided on sewing the 4 strips together in this fashion, from the burgundy, orange, green, and then the adorable pumpkins here. So I'm going to go ahead and sew them up. I've got a total of 4 strips that I can actually sew together. So let me quickly get that done. I'll bring those back. I will probably press the seam allowances open on each one of these. If you were making the actual quilt for the using a jelly roll, you would actually subcut those strips into 4.5-inch by 8.5-inch segments all the way across your jelly roll that you've sewn together. And this is called the railway unit. Each one of these is a railway unit, and you're going to need a total of 48 of those 4.5 by 8.5-inch units, which is right there, to create your quilt. For me, I'm only going to need 4. That's what I'm going to be creating. And this is the block that we're actually going to be working on here in just a minute. We're going to use some background squares along with this. So let me get my strips here, my railway units cut. So I'm going to subcut these 4.5 inches by 8.5 in length. I've got my 4 sections, my railway sections, ready to go here. So they're 4.5 by 8.5, so they are ready. You also have to cut background fabric, and you'll start by cutting a width of fabric strip. And I cut one that was 6 5/8 inches wide, and I just cut 4 squares from that. I subcut squares from that then, 6 5/8 inches all the way around. And if you're doing the quilt, you'll need 48 of those, but I only need 4 of them because I'm making just a centerpiece. You also need to cut squares for the end pieces, and I'll show you that here in just a minute, but the squares are 3 3/4 inches. And so I have 4 of those. And then just cut all of this on a diagonal once to create all of your triangles. And let me show you how that is going to go together. It shows you that on page 2. So here is one of the railway units. And you'll want to put the smaller triangles on each end and the longer triangles on each side. And before you sew them together, what I would do is crease each triangle in half and crease each, or you don't have to crease them this way because you can definitely line it up with this seam right here. But the longer side here, you want to crease those. And just make sure that you line everything up properly and then get that all sewn together. And you've created one block. If you are making the quilt, you're going to make 48 of these blocks. I am just going to make one complete block, so I'm doing 4 of these. I have one section of my railway quilt block finished. We're going to put 4 of these together, as you see right there. Those 4 will get put together just like that to make the centerpiece. So that's my goal. So I need to make 3 more identical to this. I've squared this up to 9 inches square. It will finish at 8.5 in the quilt. I have pressed my seam allowances in the center open. So as I worked on my strips, my jelly roll strips, I pressed them open. First I set the seams, then I opened and pressed them. And then I've pressed these outer seams actually toward the background. It just laid so much nicer that way, and it's not really showing through the background fabric. So that's what I have done. Now I'm going to make 3 more blocks just like this to make my complete centerpiece, and I'll bring it all back to the table in just a minute. Here are these adorable little blocks. They are so easy to put together. I hope that you'll all create at least a centerpiece like this. It's so very simple and just something that goes together very, very quickly. The quilting is going to be fun. I can do something fun in the center. I'll probably come back next week once I've got it all sewn, and I'll quilt it and show you what I'm going to do with that. I did take some of these leftover pieces and I cut them in half, so they're like 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches wide actually. And I think I might go ahead and use these around the edge here. I kind of like that. So I'm going to play around and see what I'm going to do to finish this, because I still have some leftovers that I can edge the entire thing. And then I will bind it. I think that will fit. That's the size that will work just perfectly for my kitchen table. I don't want it to get too much bigger than this, or I won't be able to, it'll be too large for the I should say it's a breakfast table. I'll bring it back a little bit so you can see it better. But I think these jelly rolls that have been cut to 1.25 are going to work out beautifully for the outside border. Tell me what you think. I love it. I can't wait to get it finished. I'll be back next week and I'll show you how I'm going to quilt this little table centerpiece. I am so pleased with how it turned out. I really love it. I used almost all of my 11-inch squares. I just have 3 of these 2.5-inch strips left. I'll think of something to do with them. I'm not quite sure at the moment, but I love what I have constructed here. I can't wait to show you how I'm going to get it quilted. Let me know if you're going to make this pattern. And again, I will link it out in the description box below. I'll also link it out on my website so that you can find it. It is a free pattern. It's out there on the Fat Quarter Shop, which is one of the resources on my website. So have fun. You could even do this in Christmas, various holidays. You could do Halloween, fall harvest, which I have done, Christmas, snowman. There's so many different things you could do as you're creating something like this. And if you're going to be making an actual quilt, the Jelly Roll quilt, I'd love to see pictures of them. So don't forget to post whatever you make out on my Facebook group page, and I'll have a link below. Here's a little centerpiece that I can use at the kitchen or breakfast nook. So this will be fun. So if you like the content that I'm providing, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share my videos with your friends and your quilt guilds. That really does help my channel to grow and get out to more quilters just like yourself. And thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'd love to see what you are creating. So don't forget to send me photos on my Facebook group page. I'd sure love to see them. Until next week, happy quilting.